Hi, everyone. Dorothea Hendriks here, your communication coach and presentation skills and public speaking. Today, my guest is Matt Young. Matt is a globally renowned expert in transforming long-term athletic development from theory into a practical operating system. With over 2 decades of experience as a franchisor in the health and wellness sector, Matt excels at rallying stakeholders toward a common goal. This man is absolutely incredible. When he sets out to do something, man, sparks will fly. His powerful message of holistic organization and player development has resonated worldwide through his keynote presentations, the documentaries he's done, and his TEDx talks. Recognized for his significant contributions, Matt has earned so many accolades, so many prestigious accolades. Among them, Vancouver, Business in Vancouver's 40 Top 40, 40 Under 40, and Caldwell Partners Canadian 40 Under 40 Business Awards. When you go on his LinkedIn site and you look at all of his accomplishments, you will be absolutely amazed. This guy is a machine, an absolutely energy machine. Notably, he and his team have raised over $6.5 million for community charities, particularly in the realm of youth health and youth sport. Welcome, Matt. You have a book coming out, and I hear it was an absolute marathon to get this book out of your head and into print on paper and now ready for the shelves.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
it was a fun.
yeah. Why is it, so the title here, why is it taking so long to fix youth sport? It brings up a big question. For some people, they'll say, oh, yeah, I know what that is. But for other people like me, why do you think youth sport needs fixing? Like, really, what's wrong with it?
Yeah, so we could talk all day just on that one question, but just to summarize the what's wrong with youth sport, really three things. Number one, culture. Number two, leadership, and number three, accountability. The culture of youth sport has sport is a microcosm of society. And in society, we are vaunting the top 1%, headlines and highlight reels, and saying to everybody, look at me, you should be like this. So we've I can't remember who the author was, but really lionizing the individual at the expense of community. That's what we're seeing kind of infiltrate youth sports as well. And that's why it needs to really shape up in terms of culturally. Leadership wise, it's a vacuum. And again, sport is a microcosm for life. We're experiencing the lack of leadership broadly, from our politicians to our local, etc. It just seems like we need just much more emphasis on creating great servant leaders. What are they there for? Are they there for their own self-interest, or are they there to elevate everyone else? And then last is accountability. In youth sport, I think it's a $30 billion a year business in Canada and the United States operating with no CEO. So the saying is, any power without constraint usually lends itself to abuse. And we're seeing that in youth sport with the number of athletes and organizations that are coming out and speaking out against, physical, sexual, verbal abuse, just the shadiness and corruption of the industry. That's why youth sport needs fixing.
Well, people, when we're talking about accountability and leadership and the culture, the whole idea here in our culture is individualism. The individual reigns, and we have something called the Olympics, which people look up to. And again, that comes to an interesting question here. If when we're in sports, aren't we there to win? I look at LinkedIn. I'm just changing the question around a bit, but I looked at LinkedIn and I looked at all your accomplishments. In fact, you've got the Guinness World Record for being the fastest bike relay across Canada. Like everything, when I look at your list, is you're out for the win, like to hold the gold. So that's what these organizations, that's what they project. Are you saying that we shouldn't project that anymore?
Great question. There's nothing wrong with winning. I am a big advocate of victory and winning, but if you looked at the LinkedIn, for example, every accomplishment that I've accomplished has come through a team. So it's the fastest relay across the country, not the fastest individual bike across the country.
Correct. Yeah.
And everything that I've had the fortune of accomplishing has been done through a team. And many times I'm just the figurehead of the team's work that accepts that award on behalf of the team. So I think that that's what's the missing. It's the and. It doesn't have to be, participation ribbons just because you showed up. But it also doesn't have to be 100 teams every year with the only goal, we're going to win the championship, because that means there's 99 losers. So I think it's a balance of saying, okay, yes, winning is important. Yes, that is that, but there's a process, and the process in youth sport is about development. And if you take care of that process and the development journey, then the wins will likely take care of themselves.
And that goes back to the introduction of long-term athletic development that you're concerned with, and putting that into a practical operating system, which is a very daunting task. And in your book, as I was going through it, I took a sneak preview. You spend a fair amount of time, addressing the physical literacy gap. Now, for many of us, we know about literacy gap, the reading, writing, arithmetic, but not so much about the physical literacy gap. I'm even having trouble stumbling over those words, right?
Yeah.
Physical literacy gap. Yeah, how did this happen? Because I'm sure this wasn't an overnight process that just all of a sudden one day you wake up and go, woo, here we've got issues with youth and their physical abilities.
Yeah, it's the insidious erosion of free play and discovery. So if you look at 0 to 5 and you look at how kids have been parented in former generations, they had a lot more freedom to go out and explore. And then this safetyism and control came in with the subsequent generations of parents where, everything was structured. So it's a structured play date. The parents are there, they're overseeing their kids, they're micromanaging in essence every movement that they make. And when there's a lack of free play, not only is that important for the physical development, but it's also important for the psychological development of developing the confidence. So it's the competence, which is the movement, and the confidence to be healthy and active, which is the definition. And that's the first part. So free play, if you don't get into free play, you're not going to learn the fundamental movement skills, run, jump, kick, catch, throw, which again extend beyond just sport in their application to being able to move through life. And if there's no fundamental movement skills, you're going to be hard pressed when you get to fundamental sport skills. So if someone doesn't know how to run, jump, or kick or catch or fall properly, strapping on a pair of skates and throwing them on a frictionless surface is going to be inevitably more difficult than it needs to be. And then the last one is the marginalization of physical education in the schools. So where it used to be you had a specialist physical education instructor, just like you would have somebody that was specialized in math, had a science degree teaching science, had a history degree teaching history. Now physical education is taught by generalist teachers. So you're going to teach a unit of science. Oh, and by the way, you're going to teach a unit of physical education as well. And what happens is we roll a ball in and we say you're going to play California kickball or ball tag or something that really does not do anything to increase the competence or confidence of somebody's motor learning from a physical literacy standpoint. So that's really how this has happened. And we use the excuses of budget cuts and, oh, well, there's not enough time, or, there's not enough focus, or it really doesn't matter. We talk about the holistic development of young people through elementary and high school, but at the end of the day, it's all about how can we get them through the reading, writing, and arithmetic so they can go on to pay in a collegiate or university setting.
Mm. That's a really sad case of affairs where I didn't realize to what extent physical education wasn't being held in a certain prominent position, because it used to be. Of course, I'm older, and it was something that was so necessary when I was growing up, right?
Right.
You had to have that teacher, and that teacher had to have a background in physical education, and just there was no discussion. And of course, that also helped in terms of school sports, right? How can
Absolutely.
you really have effective school sports and get teamwork going if you don't have people trained in that?
And I'm just going to go off that. So what has happened when you don't have that school sports system is that leads to, well, first of all, the school is where you can see almost every single kid, regardless of their gender, race, class, socioeconomic status, they all go to school. So that's the development end of the funnel where you're going to get the most amount of kids. And and the saying goes, if high performance is 1 in a million, then we need 1 million kids loving, moving, and being active and being in sport. But if we don't have that, to your point, what you get is the bifurcation of physical education. So now we have parents who take their kids to after school programs, and then they'll have their physical education in after school programs or academies. And that's not open and available to every single person. So you're already at that level in elementary school, starting to see the separation of the haves and the have-nots in terms of movement and activity. And I think that's ridiculous.
What do you think has caused this shift to happen? In fact, if we think about the change that's been happening in the youth landscape over the years, what do you think has had the biggest impact? Where did this get going?
I think really what's the shift is basically free market capitalism. So we have been able to, there's grade one, 6-year-old national basketball rankings in the United States. There's a U8 World Championships in baseball. How this happened was without accountability, savvy sportrepreneurs, we'll call them, understood that there's nothing more that parents would be all in paying for than seeing their little Jenny and Johnny succeed, in the world championships at 6-year-old baseball. The most ridiculous, absurd thing you've ever heard and seen, but really it happens. And that's once they figured out that there was no limit to the tap that would be spent on tapping into the parents' emotions around elevating their kids for success in sport. It was game on, and it's been game on ever since.
That's quite amazing because it's incredible to think that somebody would see a 7-year-old and feel that they're going to be a major baseball star or a hockey player or do the hoops, and when they're that young, right? So many things can happen and they may or may not even have the skill. They're still developing.
They are not even, it's not even on a lot of kids' radars. They just want to go out and love the experience and love the sport. And the problem is the kids don't understand or know what's happening when they're at practices for 5 to 7 days a week. We've turned sports, youth sports, into a job for a lot of kids, and despite seeing the ramifications, stats don't lie. 70% of kids quit sport by the age of 13. There's always a new group of people coming into the system, so it just keeps feeding itself. We've talked to a lot of parents after the fact when their kids had quit or when they'd aged out or when they just kind of moved on and said, what would you do differently now that you've been through the system? And a lot of them, number one answer was, I would have spoken up. I would have said something. I would have looked at the volume of training. I would have been more informed myself as to what the repercussions were in terms of burnout, in terms of injury, in terms of the lack of enjoyment. So the problem is that a lot of parents aren't going to step up to the mic and say, I was totally duped and I was an idiot and I fell for it. And, so you're not getting that passed down from generation to generation. You keep having a new group of 5-year-old parents, a new group of 6-year-old parents who don't know what they don't know. And so without any leadership, which goes back to our culture, leadership, and accountability, without any leadership and accountability coming from the sport organizations or anyone for that matter, you default to the loudest person
Mm.
that's on your team, and they may or may not have the best interest or the best knowledge base for what development is, what it should look like, and how parents should be reacting and responding at the early stages of youth sport development.
You mentioned about parents not saying something. I know in your TEDx talk, see something, say something, which is a very powerful talk. And if people out there watching haven't seen, this talk that Matt gave, TEDx talk a few years ago about see something, say something, they actually should go online on YouTube and watch it. But you just mentioned about parents not saying something. In your talk, you talk about how important this is, but also in other areas, just not because their kid dropped out. Would you expand on that? Would you share a little bit about your TED Talk with us right now?
Well, look, it's really hard as a parent, and I get it. Like, I get it. The last thing you want to do as a parent is ask a question to a coach who's an authority figure, particularly if you don't have the experience or you don't have the confidence. You're watching the ice and you're looking at what's happening. And I had a dad turn around to me, and as his kid was just getting lambasted, and just say, "Is this normal for this level of hockey? Is this what happens?" He couldn't believe it, and I was the last to comment. Four or five other parents said, "Yes, yeah, that's the coach. Yeah, that's what you get when you get to this level of hockey." And I said, "No, it's not normal. This is not normal, and it's not acceptable. And if this was any other situation where an adult was treating your kid like that, you wouldn't stand for it for a second. You would be down there so fast. But for some reason, and I don't know what it is, we tolerate it in sport. We tolerate the abuse. We tolerate the you know the I'm we're the consumers. The parents are the ones that are paying, and essentially coaches and organizations are telling us, give us your money, pay, shut up, 24-hour rule, don't talk to us. That where do we get away with that in any other sector of society? We don't. So see something, say something. A lot of parents will not speak out because they fear their kid will be unduly punished or harmed if they speak out. And to which I reply, if you're already in that situation where you're feeling you should speak out, your kid already is being harmed. You are already layering on the seeds of abuse, which are going to manifest themselves in many different ways if it's not controlled. So I get it. I get why it doesn't happen. For myself, by the end of it, we would have the preseason meeting. I'll just tell a quick story. And every preseason meeting in hockey was the same. The coach trounced out. There are a bunch of parents just hoping their kids made whatever tier they made. And they would go, "Okay, Maggie's the manager. This is how it works. Your kid's going to do 2 dryland training sessions a week. They're going to commit to 4 sessions. We're going to try to have 2 games, and we're going to go to 2 tournaments. You can decide what you're going to do. Here's the swag that everyone's going to buy. The budget's going to be here. You pay. And, by the way, my goal is to help make your son into a man." And by the end of it, I'd put up my hand and I'd say, "Do you have kids? Any questions?" And I put up my hand. I said, "Do you have kids?" And then the coach would say, "Nope." And I said, "Well, good. So leave making my son into a man to me. That's my job as a father. And you help my son fall in love with this game, because that's what your job is." And by the time I got to the stage where I felt confident enough to say that, I didn't care if he was going to come down on my kid, or that's just, it wasn't the right environment, and we could find another environment. That you can always do that, but we're beholden to the ego and FOMO, fear of missing out, and that's really what the sportspreneurs have played on.
Mm. It's interesting listening to you, the fact that, there are coaches that yell at kids, abuse kids. On the other hand, sometimes when I've gone to a game, which is not very often, but I've got some nephews in sport, a lot of people yell at the coaches. They yell obscenities, and the whole thing is a bit of a, so we're trying to get the parents to express themselves. And on the other hand, there are parents and kids that are expressing themselves in not a very good way toward the coaches, which means the coaches get on the defense. The whole thing sounds kind of toxic.
Correct.
And you talk about toxicity in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. And the environment has gotten toxic in some areas. Now, you and I have talked a lot, and we've talked about the fact that, listen, there's always good and great people that are in the system doing good and great things, but by and large, they've become the exception, not the norm. When you get athletes parading, month after month to the parliament, begging for an inquiry at our high performance system in both Canada and the United States, the gymnastics scandals, all these scandals. I mean, there's no other word for that than toxic. For those behaviors to be continued, for parents and coaches and enablers to be complicit to that, there's no other word than that. So right now, yeah, I would say the scene is a little bit toxic, which is why a lot of parents are opting out and saying, "You know what? I'm not I'm not putting my kid in that situation. I'm not interested in any of those behaviors. And unfortunately, negative news sells. So we're bombarded daily with the one or two negative examples. So even if there was 98 great things happening, we're focused on the two bad things. But it's not 98 too. It's much more than that. So yeah, it's one of these things that I do agree needs a review and it needs a refresh for sure.
What made you write this book, Why It's Taking So Long to Fix Youth Sport, and prompts you to get on the stage? You've been in this business, in the sports arena for a long time, at least 2 decades, if not longer. Well, even growing up as a child, you've been involved in sports, right?
Mhm.
So why now? Why now? Why write this book now? And you're going on the stage speaking, even doing the TEDx talk.
Well, and anyone knows it takes six. I'm a salesperson. We're all salespeople. We're all
Mhm.
selling different things. And the saying is it takes between 6 and 20 points of contact to make the sale. So myself going on to one platform on social media and spouting off about this and use sports as toxic, that's 1 point of contact, irregardless if I do it every single day for years and years. That's only 1 point of contact. We need to be able to spread these messages across multiple mediums to as many different people as possible. We don't know where the next prospective parent is coming from. They could be tuning into what you're doing. They could be listening to a TED Talk. They could be at an arena running through a manual that's been created. So it does take multiple points of contact to make that sale. What are we selling? We're selling the fact that we're in the business of development. Youth sport is the business of development, and development is simply finishing the season better than one started across a mutually agreed upon set of development criterion. If we focus on that, the winning takes care. We create multiple winners instead of the one out of 100 teams. We create the opportunity to have every single participant win. And whether they're high performance or participation, they can decide that later, and they can decide that based on their experience and whether they're having fun. So, why do all these things? I think it's the right time to have this conversation. I think I know that people don't speak up. They're afraid. A lot of people want to be in the sports sector, and they feel that if they speak out, then that will be held against them. Their views will be held against them. I don't need to be wearing a Canadian jacket of any specific sport organization. I don't want to. My emphasis and focus, and our emphasis and focus, is being on the youth sports space. We're not trying to, put a stake in the ground and saying we solved it. We're not trying to own it. We're not trying to monetize it. What we're trying to do is say, here are tools, resources, and knowledge and expertise that can help this system be better, and it's important.
Is that why you created the organization FSQ Consulting?
Yes,
You to
absolutely.
focus on sports. Do you want to share a little bit about how that started and what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, so FSQ started because we were successful in starting, scaling, and exiting our first franchise business. So in doing that business, we got to work with a lot of high net people who were running organizations who were impressed with how we were developing the culture of our organization. So we would always get asked, "Hey, can you come to my organization and talk about this or do this, or what should I do with this?" What we realize and what we do a great job of is we don't try to pretend we're great at something that we're not. So we'll go get expertise from other areas. So I was driving down from the interior. Somebody had called and basically said, "Can you help me with this aspect of our work?" I said, "Well, that's not really what I do, but I know somebody." So we put ourselves together and said, "Let's become not an agency, but let's become an organization that helps people and just does what they specifically need. We're not going to try to funnel them through the marketing and communications like a lot of agencies do. If they just need a financial audit or a budget or a performer or a template, we'll do that." So I called up our old controller. I met a great marketing and communications young woman, and I knew a business coach, and just said, "Do we all want to get together and formalize ourselves?" And FSQ, how are we going to be different? basically fuck status quo. So that's what FSQ stands for. And when someone signs up for us, they know what they're getting because they know it's not going to be the same old that kind of recycles through, through everything that we see.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about sport here, how specifically does sport, do you help sport?
Yeah, so sport basically, anytime someone calls us and says we have an issue, we get to work on solving that issue. Is it with knowledge? Is it partnering them up with some academic expertise and research? Is it governance related? Is it operating systems related? So we've created, because of our experience in a franchise business, we had to create operating systems. Nobody in sport has created an operating system for the grassroots level of sport. Nobody. Not FIFA, not the Olympic committees and federations. Everyone's saying that it's everyone else's job, and that's not our role and that's not our job. So what we did is we got to work in really creating operating systems that make it easy for the volunteers, because we're relying on volunteers,
Mhm.
to be supported through running organizations. So if there's a gap in coach development, we create coach development courses. If there's a gap in parent education and onboarding, we create or source or access that information. Player development, we talk about that. So anytime an organization comes to us and says, hey, here's our gap, how can you help us? We get to work on helping that organization.
And so you're working on youth development, basically long-term youth development. Do you get any pushback?
Tons of pushback. So first of all, I'm really glad you asked the question, because we don't typically use the word long-term player development. We'll just say player development, because
Okay.
we're in a society that wants everything right now, instant gratification. So when we started, we used to go into summits and seminars and talk about long term, and I could just see people arms folding, sitting back, not interested. So we just dropped the word long term and we just talked about player development. We are here to enhance and support player development. When we say that, we don't. It's one less barrier. It's not long term player development. It's just player development.
Okay. All right. And so what's some of the pushback that you get?
So the pushback that we'll get is, we don't care about long term. We want now. Uh,
Okay.
that's number one. And then number two is really the battling the familiarity, the eight most dangerous words in youth sport, because that's the way we've always done things. We get that a lot. You've got an old guard typically that is tasked with overseeing sport. There's a lot of ego involved in that. We've been doing it this way, irrespective of the numbers. You could tell someone, look, at your association's dropped 50% since you started. Perhaps it's time for you to revisit your strategy. I would suggest perhaps it's time for you to leave, but let's just start with perhaps it's time to revisit your strategy. And no, we got it. And anything that anytime the more you become a threat to somebody, the more they avoid you. So that's probably been the biggest hurdle, is doing that. Another thing is getting the attention, because sport is now year round. There's not any time to work on the business because everyone's in the business. And by everyone, that third problem is that it's, God bless them, volunteers. So unless that volunteer has expertise in people management and business management, because you're managing multiple stakeholders and there's tons of different business things that you've got to look after, unless they have that experience, you need to support them. And going back to the franchise model, no one's created that support. So the organizations that are up here, all they care about is you sending the best players through. They don't care about what's happening down there. That's not their problem. And if it is their problem, they'll send a glossy brochure or PDF with solutions. But if it was easy as that, then no problem. No accountability,
Mhm.
reversing the culture and really supporting the leadership.
Listening to you, I find, well, not only you've got so many years of experience, but you're able to take what you've experienced, what you see, your passion and the mission that you've got, you're able to really articulate that superbly well. And and you mentioned also that you're a salesperson. So my question to you is, and a salesperson has to be a really good presenter, a good speaker. You can't go bumbling and fumbling around having words come out of your mouth. When did you realize that you were pretty good at your communication. You had good communication skills, or have you worked on them over the years?
When I realized it was when I had to. I'm an introvert. Believe it or not, I am an introvert. I hated public speaking. I would always put in the start of our business other people in front of me and say, this is what you have to say. I just wasn't confident. I never developed that confidence in public speaking at an early age, so it took a lot of practice. I mean, I look across the screen and I see someone who's had a big impact on my ability to speak, which is yourself when in helping us get prepared for some of the talks that we've done. Really, it's the willingness and openness to being coached and being better. And how dare I go and say that the sports system needs to be better or we need to be delivering better if I'm not willing to do that myself.
So, do you practice sometimes when you're giving a presentation somewhere, you're on a stage because you've traveled all over the world and you've presented to the Olympic Committee and countless other really high profile committees? Do you go through and practice in advance, think about what questions they might ask, practice your strategy, practice how you're going to actually do your presentation?
Yeah, sometimes I do, depending. Usually, we have a pretty clear understanding of what themes that they want to come through. The benefit to us in sport is they're very consistent. So whether it's in Norway, Liechtenstein, Austria, Italy, Switzerland, United States, Canada, they're the same issues. Like they're the same issues that are plaguing sport. So it's pretty common. And what people appreciate and like is like, oh, we thought this was just our issue. This is a global issue. Smartphones have been, adopted globally. So that's hours and hours that are taking kids' time away from what they would have been doing, which is exploring and having fun. So a lot of the issues are common issues. But yeah, I will practice absolutely. And it went from there was a period of time where I'm actually fairly humble for all of the stuff that we've accomplished. I will say that humbly. It took me a lot to realize that, hey, you know what? I mean, I've got 30,000 hours of coaching coaches, of coaching um, players from high performance players in some of the most highest leagues that we've got to just general people and coaching clients. So it took a while to say, you know what, someone needs a voice, and why are you letting all of these fake experts, fake it till you make it experts, have the stage when you've actually got that knowledge and experience? Like, stop complaining about them getting the market share or having a voice or having their things shared and step up to the plate. So, yeah.
I think, and we're so much better for the fact that you did ask yourself that question and you are here. You are sharing your experience and your vision and your dream for sports. If you could go back to the beginning of when you started, when you got involved, of seeing that the whole arena of youth sports needed to take a shift, needed to be changed. If you could go back to your business, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently? And if you would, what would that be?
I would have spoken up way sooner. Do you see how fast I answered that question? I would
Yeah.
have spoken up way sooner than
What can you
I
tell
did.
parents to encourage them to speak up way sooner?
Yeah, I think we're finally getting to a education stage and a knowledge stage where and an intolerant stage of bullying and all of those things that people, oh, come on, that's just old school. Oh, you're being soft. You know what? We're getting to a better stage of enlightenment in understanding how those things really affect the long-term psychology of people,
Yeah.
and our tolerance for those is way less. So I would say, timing wise, it's the right time to do that. Encouraging, how do you encourage someone to do something? You do it yourself. So when people, we get messages weekly. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for, calling out what is wrong with youth sport and the leadership without fear. Thank you. We get that a lot. And I think those actions, sticks in a bundles are hard to break. So those actions, when you get more and more people, then you can kind of flip that pendulum. And it doesn't need to go again. I am not participation ribbons and handing out trophies for people just for showing up. That's not what this is about. This is about dialing it back just a little. You know as well as anyone else, the pendulum swings all the way over there or all the way over there. We're just trying to say, you know what? It needs to come back to center. So we need to get centered. We need to chill out. We need to enjoy the process. We need to understand what the process is. And then what gets measured becomes what matters. So we need to stop using the standings, the scoreboard, and the schedule as our benchmark for development. That's nothing to do with anything. That's you aggregating a superior team and kicking the crap out of inferior opponents is not a good coach, is not a good club, and is not development. That's something that's just feeding your ego that no one learns from.
So you're beginning to see a little shift happening, right?
Yes, it's getting
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, it's getting better. What gives you the idea or tells you right now that things, because you're speaking up, you've got an organization that is encouraging people to speak up. You've now written a book. You and your team have traveled around the world. Where do you see and how do you see this shift taking place right now? Just even if it's just very, very little.
The the benefits of social media are the downfalls of social media. So the benefits are when this behavior is happening, it is now not happening in isolation.
Mm.
Uh, you will get people saying, "This is what I observed this past weekend," and then people will weigh in. And some of those people, the first three or four comments on anything is usually the intelligent ones, and then it just digresses into trolling and nonsense. But um, people are speaking up. People are seeing it. They're speaking up. So the information is being shared. You're not alone. We're in it together. You know, these movements are important. The Me Too movements, the women's rights movements, what's happening with women's sports right now, massive. It's fantastic. You know, looking at a lot of these things that are taking place through the courage of people to speak up before us have given now a voice and a better voice to those who are coming behind them in all aspects and sectors, I think, of society. So I think now is the perfect time to do that, and that's why it's happening.
You talk about empowering in your book. You talk about, well, you've also mentioned it here today about empowering athletes and their families. And how do you communicate that empowerment? What are the things? Can you give 3 tips on how people can empower athletes, empower families?
Well, I think, by people, if you mean experts on how to empower families and people I think number one, understanding what the purpose of youth sport is.
Mhm.
Understanding the purpose of youth sport is developing not only the sports aspect, but the life aspect. You, youth sports is a perfect dress rehearsal for real life. You're going to understand winning, losing, victory, defeat, responsibility, communication, feedback in a really forgiving environment. So if you can learn it there, after youth sports, you're still getting an ice cream. In business, if you screw up, you're in shit. Like there's consequences that are happening. So learn that early and understand what it is. That's number one. Number two is I really think that you know we need to understand what development is. So it's finishing the season with better skills than we started. So what's our role in that? How do we support that as coaches, as parents, as teammates, as players? I don't think it's been defined. I don't think it's been simplified for people where they can grab onto it and go, oh, we're supposed to be looking at that, not that. So let's stop being distracted with that and focus on that because that's all that matters. I think that's a big part of the empowerment process. And then I think it's relentless education and engagement. I use those words because nobody likes to be educated as a parent, as a coach, or as anything. So I always use the word engagement and development, because words do matter and it's different. It's a lot different in asking someone to come to a development workshop than it is an education workshop. Because
Mm.
the development workshop can appeal to the coach who's been coaching for 50 years or 2 years. And it can appeal to the parents and it's appealing. So I wish we would stop saying parent education and coach education. because I think we would get more people. So you're talking about the empowerment process. How do we do it? It's relentless. In the franchise business, you don't just bring somebody into learn your business system once and then put them on the floor and then never speak to them again. You have an ongoing engagement and a dialogue, morning huddles, weekly meetings, retreats, all of those things that on the flow feedback, a manager overseeing you. Like you've got all those things in place to make sure that you're constantly delivering what you're supposed to be delivering. We don't have that in sport. So I think that that's a big miss in terms of empowering people to understand it. And then the most important part about empowering people is actually understanding what kids want from their sport experience. They've told us. They told us over and over again. We don't need any more research around that. It's been done well. Some of the top 10 things they value are fun, friends, fair play, friendly competition, and finishing the season better than they started across skills. So are we delivering on that? That's all that matters. Nothing else matters other than that. They are the consumer. They are the participant, not the parent. It's not about the coaches. It's not about the resumes. It's not about anything else. So if we could continue to share that message and really simplify it, I think we would start to see more people get empowered to do better things.
You worked with Nike. Nike was doing some research on what kids want, right? What did Nike find? The same thing that you're
Nike,
describing?
yeah, Nike did a global study. I think it was $100 million on what was missing with the sport system, and they identified, it was called Design to Move, and it identified a lot of the similar things that we're talking about, what kids valued from their experience, what they needed, what we had to do. I think the biggest thing that we took away from the Nike experiment was number one, the collaboration, bringing everything together again. So you've got in our systems in our society, sport doesn't talk to health, doesn't talk to education, doesn't talk to parks and recreation, doesn't talk to the local media. So you've got siloed approaches to all of that. When if you had run approach, you'd get way further faster and you'd have more cooperation. That was one of the things that Nike talked about. The second one was really designing space for kids to be healthy and active and designing the right things around coaching, the right things around early experiences. So free play, fundamental movement skills, and physical education. That's what they found. In the populations and societies where sport was still doing well, they had all those things in place. Where it's dropped off, they don't have those things. They've lost their way
And it's dropped off here in North America, hasn't it?
through the basement.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had listening to you and we've talked before about some, how you grew up. What role did mentors play in your life? Or do you have a mentor that stands out for you that you model and you'd like to carry forward even to your own sons?
Absolutely. The best, I'm a very curious person. So I learn and observe through listening and watching other people's success and not success. And I'll go, okay, I'm not doing that. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of mentors who were business owners and founders are really good ways of seeing and listening and gleaning that information on how to run an organization, how to conduct yourself, what
Mhm.
to avoid, how to negotiate, and then it's education. So I won't talk to you about the need to relentlessly educate other people or provide that education and engagement if I'm not doing it myself, because that's the biggest uh, conflict I see in sport. We've got people that are advocating the very things they're not doing themselves or not willing to, not making the time to. So I listen to podcasts, I watch documentaries, I immerse myself in books, in reading, a minimum of 12 books a year, a minimum of 100 podcasts a year, a minimum of 100 documentaries a year, every single year on a broad range of topics. So I think that is really for me what the key is to continuing to learn, continuing to prepare myself to respond to what's happening. I'm not operating off the 1995 playbook because that's irrelevant. If I haven't coached in the last 5 years, how dare I speak about how to coach people in a summit or at some conference? If I'm the marketing and communications person for a charity, how dare I speak to how to run a grassroots sport organization? There's no context in that. Unless you're actually willing to put yourself in it, Brene Brown, step into the ring. Unless you're able to step into the ring, shut up. But you just become, and I mean that it's, although it's trite, I'm dead serious because what happens is you're talking without context, and that's really dangerous. Let's just look at what's happening south of the border right now. When you talk without context, you actually become part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Yeah, step into the ring, speak from the ring, makes such a difference. When looking at yourself, Matt, what would you say are your strongest skills, the attributes that you have that stand out, that people comment on when it comes to helping others?
I have no problem not being full of shit. So I won't bullshit people. And again, I'm dead serious about that. There's so much bullshit that's going on out there. We really have to discern between who's the expert and who's just doing this for an ulterior motive or a different reason. Number two, I'm relentless. So the relentlessness is, people, their kids age out of sport. They're not connected with it anymore. Let's just leave it. Say, yeah, whatever. It wasn't great, but whatever. My kid's on to the next thing. My kids have aged out of sport, and I'm still here. And this still is a problem that needs to be solved. So I think that people appreciate that relentlessness. I'm like a dog on a bone, so I'm not stopping until we see small, medium, or large scale transformation in sport. And then I think the ability to not to team everything again, everything that we've accomplished, that I've accomplished, has come through a team. It's my preference. You have to work as a team. If you and I hadn't met, I wouldn't be here. So I wouldn't be on this podcast today. That's a team. And how did I get to that TED experience? One of my teammates referred me to someone else, and then that. So everything for me is team, and I really believe that. I believe in an or in a. We need to be a team so much more in youth sports, in life, in society right now than we're behaving. So I'd say those are the three main things.
Those are very unusual things, and I'm going to go relentless. Is not often a word that I hear, and I like it. It's a strong word. Perseverance is often something what people say they persevere, but to be relentless, and it goes back to having that passion that you do for this mission that you want to accomplish. And I think when you talk about team, that almost seems sometimes we hear the word team used a lot, but the whole idea about our culture is to be your own person, be your own, do your own thing, move forward, with yourself because you can do it, which is, it shouldn't be contrary to being a team. You can be an individual, work on your skills within a team. But how do we promote this concept of team, raise the bar on it so that people see it as something to aspire to be part of?
Change happens by design or by disaster. We're not proactive. We're reactive. Every time there is a crisis of magnitude, you see team come out. Uh, you know, insert community name here, strong. This strong, something strong. We're constantly reminded of that when people do come together, thank God. But what people don't understand is the whole promotion of be your own, do your own. It's at the end of a marketing tick. It's at the end of a marketing handle. Someone's trying to sell you something to do that. It's not really how it should go. You'll be happier. No, not everyone should be their own boss and can be. Not everyone should be. From McDonald's, you deserve a break today. Why? It's 7:15 a.m. Why do you deserve a break? You've not done anything. That's just marketing. So that's just clever marketing. And the problem is we don't draw the line between the marketing and the reality, and we need to do a better job of that.
Oh, that's so true, so true. On Well, it's my second final question is I'm listening to you and going through as I listen to you answer all these questions and I see what you're involved in. I go, how did you move yourself from being an introvert into actually somebody who comes across as an extrovert? How did you transition? What do you do? Do you still find that at the end of the day, after you've given a presentation, you put yourself into a corner to recoup your energy? How did you put yourself to where you are now? And what do you do to re-energize yourself? Or how does that work?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question because it's a great question and it's intentional. I do sequester myself. I take a lot of time away from people to recharge, and I still use health and fitness to recharge. So I'll do 2 hours of movement a day that's physically active. And in doing that, it really allows me to process a lot of thoughts and regain that energy. I go to bed early, I wake up early, and I keep very few good friends. I keep a tight circle, and I find that super helpful. I'm on a lake right now, and I really use that time for quiet and really shutting off the noise. I unsubscribe from social media. I don't follow people that I don't respect or can't, deliver value to me. And I think it's just been putting that into practice. A lot of people say that, we read it, get out into nature, do that. Oh yeah, yeah, that's good. But we don't actually do that. And I think that's the number one thing. The formula for success doesn't need to be reinvented. It needs to be implemented. And I'm going to be one of those people that just looks at what other people are doing and again goes, that I don't want that. I want that. So I think that's the reason to do it and how I've been able to be successful. But it's been a journey. And then the other thing is go back to Brene Brown. I had to throw myself in the ring. And if you don't throw yourself in the ring, then you can't possibly be as big a part of the solution as you could if you did.
Mhm.
Those who are on the periphery of the ring and commenting, in my opinion, they become more part of the problem than the solution. So I don't want to be that. I want to be for my boys, for other people in the industry. I want to be that voice. I want to be that one point of contact inspiration that then they can build on to do great things and by their own right.
And you are an inspiration. I find just listening to you, I'm not even that heavily involved in sports, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I should get out there immediately and do something, right? Well, I will go to the gym later, so that's one little step.
Excellent.
You've got a book, like I mentioned earlier, we started off with your book. When is the book going to come out for people to grab off the shelf?
June 1st. June 1st is
June
on a
1st.
Saturday, June 1st. It's going to launch.
Wow. So people will be getting your book. They'll know about the book. You're going to promote your book. How will you know? What will give you an idea that your book, your passion will be making a difference in people's lives?
If they are able to take one thing from that book, from that collection of words, ideas, thoughts, and experiences, if they're able to take one thing and action it in their own setting, then that book's a success. So whether it is understanding what development is, whether it is just seeing the traps, whether it is really, figuring out how we got here from where youth sports started, whether it's taking a bigger action and a bigger role in volunteering for their community, whether it's demanding more from their, local school physical education experience for their kids, whether it's volunteering and putting their hat in the ring just to do something small. If they take one thing from that book and action it and do something with it, then that's a success.
It's a powerful read, and I'm going to say from having gone through it, you've given me this opportunity to have a peek preview. You've give wonderful examples. It's an intense read. This is not something you're going to go through very quickly because you have to think about things, right? And you're poking at a lot of people and you're making people think about how they'd respond. And what I really appreciated is at the end of every chapter, you go through and you condense it. You condense each chapter beautifully well, just marking off the highlights, what people should focus on, what they can think about before you move on to the next chapter. And I found that just to be very informative, good to capsulate everything. And it really served as a bridge into the next chapter. So I thought it was really well put together.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So before we wrap up here, do you have anything that you'd like to share with people who are listening, people who are watching?
Beyond the obvious, youth sport is really important. It's one of the exercises in our society that really can be embraced by everyone. It's got so much far-reaching tentacles into leadership, into health, wellness, confidence, competence, culture, character, connection, social emotional connection, development. We cannot just sit by while we let it be cannibalized by free market capitalism, like we've done for almost everything else. It can't be that way. If we're sitting here and we're wondering why all the addictions, why the mental health issues, why all these kind of downstream conditions have come up, a lot of them are in part really influenced and affected by youth sport, by physical activity, physical literacy, movement, etc. We're a species that is designed to move, that is being continually, what's the word, marginalized and catered to in terms of doing less and less and less. Now we don't even have to exercise. We can just take a pill and lose weight. That's not going to lead to healthy outcomes. We're going to get out of it what we put into it. And this is worth saving. And it's worth saving even if you've had a kid go through it. It's worth saving even if you're an educator that says, I can't because the union has come down and said we can't do X, Y, and Z. It's worth it if you're someone that says, well, I'd like to coach, but I really don't know how and I don't think I'd be good. It's worth it. And we need to really step up and action it.
In terms of stepping up and action it, can we bring it back into the school system?
Step number one.
Step number one. Get parents behind to bring it back into the schools. Yeah, because I think that is a key area where definitely, as you say, that's where you're going to hit every child of every age, every grade, every level, and connect with them so they'll have a taste of sport in
Absolutely.
some way. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Matt. To everybody, please go check out Matt's talk, See Something, Say Something, his TEDx talk. Buy his book, and I have to go and find the title here, and the title is, Matt, the title is?
Why it's taken so long to fix youth sport.
Why it's taking so long to fix youth sport. And as Matt said, whether you've got somebody that is in sport, you've got children that are in sport, you don't have children that are in sport, you're a grandparent and your children are all gone and through sport and off to other things, it's a very interesting read. And I would say whether you're in sport or not, pick it up. Why it's taking so long to fix youth sport. Matt, thank you so very much. Check out Matt. You'll find him on Twitter and you'll find him on LinkedIn and probably even at your local community center one day.
Thanks so much for having me on, Dorothea.
You're most welcome, and it's been my pleasure. So to Matt and to everybody watching today, this is Dorothea Hendriks wishing you mountains of success.